there's kind of this weird difference, like teachers who maybe see administrators like they used to be teachers but not anymore, right? They're somehow like you've gone over to the dark side.
Totally.
But there's something about that, I think, that teachers don't actually know all the pressures that administrators face because we have different offices.
Right. Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of collaboration and reflection as we seek to keep growing as teachers. So this podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to Hallway Conversations. My name's Matt Beamers.
I'm Dave Mulder.
I'm Abby DeGroat.
As always, we want to thank you for allowing the three of us to be here with you, and we want to thank you for joining us in the hallway this week. Each week, one of us brings a question and we try to think creatively around it in the context of what it means to teach Christianly. We are good friends who love each other, and we love engaging each other in conversation about our practice, and our deep hope is that you are enriched and encouraged in your own work, and maybe even in your everyday walking around life. Well, we have a long list of topics we want to talk about. We want to know what hallway conversations you would like to hear. So if you have ideas or questions or feedback about this broadcast or podcast for us, or simply to share what hallway conversations you're having, please email us at hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayconvospod@gmail.com. Today's question actually comes from one of our listeners, Tom. So Tom, first of all, thanks for being a faithful listener. And thanks for sending in your question. Here's Tom's question today.
Hey, Abby, Matt, and Dave. This is Tom. I'm a school leader at a Christian school in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. And my question is what do teachers need from their administrators? And what do administrators need from their teachers?
That's a great question, Tom.
That is a great question, Tom. We should just have Tom on the podcast to answer that question. Tom, what do you need from your... Well, you know, it's interesting. I got an email actually last night. I have a friend who's becoming a principal for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be starting their first formal school leadership position this coming fall. And they're in the process of moving. And one of his questions in the email, he's like, I'm meeting with the departing administrator, what questions should I ask him? And one of the questions, or one of the things that I suggested was, ask the person who's leaving, what did it look like or to support teachers? Mm-hmm. But then I also said equally or even more important is ask your teachers what they need. Like Dave, one of your answer to so many of our hallway conversations begins with, well, it depends. And it does depend actually, and I think that's why it's so important to actually ask your teachers that. I know in the past one of the things that we've done at the school I was at was to ask teachers, and just a small survey was, hey, what does it look like for you to feel supported by me as a principal? Like, what does that actually look like? And I'll tell you, I learned this actually, I don't want to say the hard way, because it's not a hard story, but I can remember a few years ago, we were going in, I used to be a school principal, recovering high school teacher, recovering school principal, and before a professional development day, I thought it would be nice to get a $5 Tim Hortons card for staff.
For the Americans, if you don't know Tim Hortons, it's the best coffee place you're going to find north of the border.
Yeah, and if you don't know Tim Hortons, we have bigger issues. But we'll explain more. But anyway, so I got them a $5, a Tim Hortons, a coffee card, just as a simple way to say thanks.
Sure.
And it was much appreciated by many people. I got lots of nice emails and comments. But I had one teacher, a wonderful teacher who I trust deeply, and so it was, even it was done in the right spirit. But basically, kind of came and said to me, he's like, "Hey, I totally appreciate the coffee card." I said, "But if you really want, basically, I'm wondering if I can trade in the coffee card for you to cover one of my 15-minute recess blocks next week." And that for me was sort of this moment of, hey, I think a coffee card would be nice for me, so I'm going to get one for everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have to, one of the things in school leadership that I had to learn is, this idea of we teach who we are, we lead who we are. Sort of like, well, if I would like a Tim Hortons card, I'm sure everyone would like a Tim Hortons card. Whereas this one teacher, and again, done in the right spirit, so it was very easy to receive, but basically said, I don't necessarily need coffee. What I sort of need is time, and that's where it made me realize, sort of like, what I should stop assuming that I know what it looks like for teachers to be supported by me as a principal. So I'll start with that story.
I love that you share that, though, because I think this gets to, in the same way that different students need different things to flourish, different teachers probably need different things to flourish, right?
Agreed.
And it's easy for us to kind of paint teachers as some kind of monolith and say, how teachers are. Well, which teachers?
Totally.
And not just what grade levels they teach or what subjects they teach, but like what are their unique needs and gifts and challenges and all of that, right? How do we take that into account?
And where are they in their career path, right? A new teacher is going to need very different things than someone who's been doing that job for 15 years.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. But Abby, if you think about that as also a former high school English teacher, what sort of jumps to your mind if someone, if a principal came to you and said, "Hey, Abby, what do you need from me as a teacher? How can I support you as a principal?" What would it be for you? How would you answer that, maybe at a personal level, even?
I think for me, being seen and having feedback that, warm and cool feedback that is specific to my own practice is really important for me in order to grow and flourish, right, as a teacher. And I think that's true for students, too. That's what I believe about assessing my own students, right? I'm not going to read a paper and put one comment at the end, great job, right? Because that doesn't communicate to the student that I actually read what they wrote. Right, I try to comment specifically on things on the document itself, or mentioning things in my comment. I often do verbal comments to students on assessment, and I think teachers need the same. One conference at the end of the year saying "great job" does, I don't believe you.
Right.
Interesting.
Because even if it's all positive, I don't feel like you actually saw what I did. Right, and so I think there's a balance. We talked about that, right? Not overstepping. I think principals have a hard job, right? Not to micromanage, but also to be in classrooms or to be involved with students enough to really see the work that teachers are doing and to be able to call out, I love this. I wonder about this.
And I said this, and this could be true for me too, to have an open door policy, right? But as a wise mentor said to me once, you can have an open door policy all you want. It doesn't matter if no one's walking through the door, right?
Right.
I worked with a vice principal. His name was Danny. He was younger than I was, but I think quite honestly, I probably learned more about leadership watching him. And no disrespect to anyone else I worked with, but I think I learned more about leadership working with him than anyone. And among many things that I learned from him, he had this habit at the end of the day is he would go up and down, and literally every day he would go up and down the hallway and would get every classroom and check in with every single teacher. And if it wasn't every day, I bet you it was 9 out of 10 days, if not more than that. And he would have a check-in question or just see how they're doing, hey, can you give me a rose and a thorn about your day, or just something. And he would just go up and down, and he would build a relationship and build trust, and he would do it one-to-one rather than in a big group. And I like that idea of instead of being in my office saying, hey, I'm in my office if you want to give me feedback. Most teachers aren't coming to your office. Honestly, there's a bit of a power dynamic there, if we're honest.
Yeah.
And meeting them in their space and in their territory, and like I said, checking in with them, but also asking for feedback. And then if you're asking for feedback, to take it to heart and to use it to make change, to not just patronizingly ask for it and then just kind of get on with it. So. Anyway, sorry, Dave. I'd love to know your thoughts.
I love hearing you say that, and I'm thinking about a former administrator that I worked with, and he used to joke, well, I manage by walking around. And that's a good line, but he actually did. Like, he was in his office some, because you got to be in your office to get stuff done. But he tried to take several laps around the building every day, and I tend to teach with my door open, and he would often just walk in, and it wasn't like a formal observation. It was more just kind of taking the temperature. And I guess when I think about what do teachers need from administrators, being present. That's a really big part of it.
And I think when you do that, it allows for those times where you're in your office with the door shut.
Yeah.
For that to be like, oh, that's understandable, because it's a both and instead of an either or. I remember it wasn't actually that long ago. I was at Denver Christian, and Tyler is the middle school principal at Denver Christian School.
Yep.
And I mean, that I don't know anyone that walks around more than he does, just in listening to him. But he also had this stand-up desk, which I had heard about, but I had never seen in action. And it's on wheels, and so he'll literally be up and down the hallway, or he'll be in one place, or he'll be in classrooms. And I ended up actually buying a stand-up desk a couple years ago, like his, with the same purpose. And I don't think I walked around nearly as much as he. I mean, he was amazing at it. And I visited one of our local principals, Brian, principal at a local Christian high school here in northwest Iowa, and went to visit that school. And they've got this wonderful entrance area that's so inviting with couches and chairs. And he was sort of working on the couch, kind of in where the students hung out most of the day. Like, even when they were in class and students would walk by, and he knew their name, and he greeted staff by name. And there's something to be said for that. And just like there is something to be said, like I mentioned earlier, to times where I'm actually going to take my rolling desk, and I actually just need to work in my office, and I just need some quiet time for 2 or 3 hours. And the reality is there's no 2 or 3 hours of downtime for it.
Right.
You're going to get interrupted, but at least it allows you to focus a little more. But I think of Tyler and Brian as the two guys who not just managed by walking around, but actually developed culture by walking around. It was cool to see.
I love hearing you describe this, though, Matt, because that's something, I mean, I think a lot of teachers don't see. There's kind of this weird difference, like teachers who maybe see administrators like they used to be teachers, but not anymore, right? That they're somehow like you've gone over to the dark side.
Totally.
But there's something about that, I think, that teachers don't actually know all the pressures that administrators face because we have different offices.
Right.
And not physical offices, but like the role that we inhabit in schools is different. And we don't, as classroom teachers, maybe we don't see the pressures that administrators face. And I felt a sense of that. So I used to be the technology director for a Christian school, and it was kind of a weird position. It's kind of quasi-administrative. It's not like I taught at a computer room. I worked in the computer room, so that was my office, so to speak, that way too. And I taught about half-time, but I also had to manage a budget, and I had other responsibilities, and so I empathize with administrators in that sense, I think, right? That, classroom teachers didn't know what I did, and I probably didn't communicate that very well to them. So like, why can't you just solve my problem right now? Well, because I've got all these other things I also have to do at the same time. And I'm guessing that's maybe the case for administrators more often.
Yeah, but I would, yes, and it depends, because I think this is why it's so important for principals to walk around, to be not just during the day but after school or before school, right? Like, what went well today? Like, what's causing you stress today? Like, what what does it look like for me to support you? What barriers can I remove to help you succeed? Like anything like that, I think is important, because I do think it is easy in schools where the principal does not have to teach. For sure, the stresses are different. I don't want to say more important, because then it sounds like I'm diminishing. There's different pressures with each office, right? With each vocational office. And I think teachers and principals would do well to try to understand at times the pressures that each other faces, because it can happen as a principal where you sort of, even if you've come from the classroom, you can sort of forget, what it feels like to get that email from a parent. or the stresses of report cards, or how do I balance what's happening at home with what's happening at school. So I do think there's, and in the end, there also has to be some trust there, right? Like, I trust that it's hard work. It's the whole dark side comment, Dave. That's interesting that you said that, because I hear that more often than if I'm honest, than I'd like, or that it sort of unsettles me at times, because leadership there might be a hard side to leadership, a different hard side than in the classroom. But in the end, it's a place God calls us to serve, and so
Yes.
I think we would do well to sort of remove that phrase from, because I don't think it's helpful, and I don't think it's helpful for principals, especially if you're a new principal. That now all these people that were your colleagues, that somehow you've gone to the dark side.
Well, it needs to be a team effort, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Thank
same
you.
team,
Right.
and
Yeah.
someone has to do it,
Yeah. Someone
Yeah,
has to
someone
do it.
has to do it.
right? And so why not align your goals and work together toward them?
And it makes it more of kind of this reciprocal relationship then,
Right.
right? Like, we do have different roles to play, so let's just name that. And
Right.
I don't fully understand your role, but you maybe don't fully understand the pressures on me, so let's
Right.
do our best to communicate that then. So,
Yeah.
well, clear as kind, as
Yeah,
you've said
clear as
before,
kind.
right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's one thing that I think for myself as a teacher, what would I want from administrators? I want clarity a lot of times, right? Like, I need clarity on what I'm free to do, and I need clarity on the amount of structure that is happening here. And once we're all clear on that, then I feel like people are more likely to flourish in their roles, right? For administrators and for teachers.
No.
What about principals? What do they? I feel like we've talked a lot about what they can do, but what do they need?
Yeah, maybe once in a while. I don't know that it's the teacher's job or teacher's role, for lack of a better word, but I know there would be teachers who were pretty intentional about checking in on me, like just, hey, what's, like I mentioned this, I mentioned Danny earlier, and one of the questions that I've borrowed or from him that I heard him ask of, what's one thing that helped you choose joy today? Well, I had a few teachers that would come in and ask me that today. Hey, what's one thing that's helped you choose joy today? Or what's something that surprised you today? Or I can think of a couple of teachers who say, like, without being specific, what's one thing I can pray for you this day?
Yeah.
And those those kind of things, those kind of questions and those check-ins once in a while. And I think as a principal, I worked in a school with a superintendent, Dave, who's still one of the most phenomenal school leaders I've ever worked with, and he did a really good job of checking in with me. Like, he's like, hey, this is my job as a superintendent, and I would say for principals who are in schools without a superintendent, I hope that they have a good relationship with the school board and maybe the chair, the chairperson specifically, that they're checking in with each other once a week. And if there's principals listening to this, or even a school board member listening to this, I'd say, hey, what do you have in place to take care of your principal? And principals, if that's not in place, I'd encourage you to seek that out. If you're kind of the head of school, to seek that out from a board chair and say, hey, like how do we care for each other? So I would say those types of things of asking again, like what do you need? And
In the end, we're all in this together, after all.
no,
right?
for sure. Friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. Whether it is this day, this week, this month, or this school year, we do hope that the Lord gives you what you stand in need of. We want to thank you for the good, God-delighting work that you're doing in your schools and communities. And for those of you on summer or going into summer break, we pray for a restful time of Sabbath for you. And we just blew it.
It's all right.
Yeah,
all
let's
right.
say again. Friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. Whether it is this day, this week, this month, or this school year, we do hope that the Lord gives you what you stand in need of to end the year well. We want to thank you for the good, God-delighting work you're doing in your schools and in your communities. And as you go into this week, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace and give you peace and give you peace. Amen. Have a good week, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
This podcast was quite literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is an independent podcast created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Thanks for listening.